Hey guys, what's up? It's your boy RJ Game News USA here. And I just got out of the theater watching Spider-Man Brand New Day. And I got some thoughts on it. So stick around. You like movie reviews, hit that subscribe button. All right. So this is definitely one of the most anticipated movies of the year. First, we're going to do non-spoiler stuff. I will let you know before we get into spoilery territory. So non-spoiler part of the review is here. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of it, let me give you some context. I've watched Spider-Man for over 30 years of my life. My favorite adaptation of Spider-Man is still the animated series from the 90s. That's what I grew up with. I'm going to have nostalgia for it always. I am more of a fan of the Tobey Maguire movies than I am the Tom Holland movies. However, I think the Tom Holland stuff is better than the Andrew Garfield stuff. That's where I sit with Spider-Man. I consider the Tom Holland Spider-Man the Gen Z Spider-Man. Meanwhile, the millennial Spider-Man is more Tobey Maguire. And I gotta say, I don't believe this movie was better than any of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. I give this movie an 8 out of 10. I think it's rock solid. I think it's better than the other Tom Holland movies. Maybe some of you think this is a harsh grade. I'll explain why. There are a few negatives to touch. But I do want to talk about the positives, and the spoiler-free positives are this. I really appreciate Tom Holland's acting job. That is where I'm going to start with. Spider-Man himself is very likable in this movie. I really didn't like him in the first movie that he did. I thought he was kind of a brat. This Spider-Man had a slightly darker tone, but it wasn't too dark. You know, Spider-Man's kind of in between that Batman and that Superman attitude. Leaning a little more Superman as far as things go, but this darker tone, of course, you guys seen in the trailers and from the previous movie, people's memories are wiped of him. So it's set up, you know, a more interesting situation, I think. A little bit of adversity for him, which I think was needed for this movie. Now, when we talk about the supporting cast, I think they did a great job. I have never been a big fan of who they casted for MJ, because that's just not the MJ I know. The MJ I know is a white chick with a red head. So, sorry if that offends anybody, just the truth. I do think the friend Ned is funny. I do think he fits in with Peter's sort of goofy nerd nature, and I got no issue there. So, and then when we get to the rest of the cast, you know, I think they casted people that used to be in Breaking Bad, used to be in Stranger Things, that are in some other big name stuff. They had some big name actors. So I thought the acting was pretty top notch here. I thought the overall pacing of the movie, to me, it runs a little long. I think movies should be a little shorter. I think that the comic book movie genre was saturated for a while now. We're course correcting. Now, this is an extremely popular movie. This theater was as packed as I've ever seen it before. And it's a smaller theater, and it's as packed as I've ever seen it. This movie is going to do buku bucks, and it deserves to, for sure. Music was great, and I thought the CGI was great as well. And the action sequences were amazing. And so all of that I put in the spoiler-free positives. Now, from a sort of like spoiler-free negatives, wasn't the biggest fan of the main villain in this. I really thought it was a weak villain, even though it obviously gives Spider-Man problems. I was really hoping for a better villain than what we got here. And so, had we gotten a better villain, this probably would have been a better movie. I was not a fan of that. And I'll get into the spoilers here in a little bit. So, there's that. Yeah, and overall, I think the movie's a good watch. It's not something I'd want to watch again. It's not something I'd want to own. It probably won't even be a top 10 movie for me by the end of the year. But I definitely don't regret watching it in theaters. I'm glad I saw it on the big screen. So like I said, 8 out of 10. That's your non-spoiler review. Now, we're going to get into the spoilers here. So if you haven't already watched Spider-Man, please stop the video now. Go watch it first, and then I will give you my spoiler review. So here's the spoiler review. Now, I'm not going to sit here and go over every single little plot point. but I am going to somewhat touch on the plot here. So, obviously, everybody's memory is wiped of Spider-Man, who he is, Peter Parker. Not Spider-Man, they're wiped of Peter Parker being Spider-Man, including MJ and his friend Ned. And so I think it's a good jumping off point for somebody that, even if they didn't watch the trilogy, they can kind of jump in. They really aren't missing a whole lot. In fact, in some ways that might be the better way to watch it even. But I'll just straight up say, I'm a little surprised that by the end of the movie, MJ and Peter weren't back together. I'm a little surprised they left that plot point still hanging there going into the next movie. I thought for sure they'd tidy that up. I was hoping it'd be even more darker and broodier. At times it was. It very much was. But they did leave a little bit of light there at the end of the tunnel. I hate the trope that, hey, your main villain actually, they need saving too now. And the person, the person that you just helped, the group you just helped, they're actually the villain. I'm so tired of that trope because there's this chick that can shift between minds and jump minds, and you find out she was just trying to save her sister, and her sister's got killed. So the organization you already helped for more than half the movie turns out to really be the villain, and then you have this sort of corny, cheesy, hey, your powers, you should use them with responsibility, but let's forget the fact that she just jumps in people's bodies without consent, and she jumps around. I can't stand it. I'm more in line with what the Punisher tried to do. And of course, Spider-Man, he took the bullet. He went to the hospital. Some of those moments were nice. I was used to the Spider-Man that was vilified by half the city. Like, whether it was in the 90s cartoon or by most of the city was vilified. And even in the Tobey Maguire movies too, where people are like, the cops are always trying to get him to, and they're not working with him, and he's sort of like a figure that is half loved, half hated. In this movie, he's pretty much primarily loved, essentially. And the cops work directly with him. And that's not really exactly what I'm looking for out of something like a Spider-Man or a Batman movie. So, now that being said, I did enjoy a little bit of the comedic moments in there. I think Tom Holland definitely injected some comedic moments. Now, as far as the story goes, like I said, I felt like we were missing some big villain here that really could have popped this off, and we really didn't get that, and that was disappointing. But like overall, the action sequences just make up for so much. Like, this is just a movie that if you turn your brain off and just enjoy the action, you're really going to enjoy it. Now, obviously the big plot point here too involves MJ not knowing who Peter is. She eventually finds out, and to be completely honest, I feel like MJ is extremely unlikable in this situation. And it reminds me so much of exes of mine when she tells him, well, I don't love you anymore, because she can't remember him. So she says, well, I wasn't in love with you. It was that girl. I've heard that excuse so many times from women where it's like, well, I'm not that person anymore. I'm not that person anymore. And so it immediately set me off. And maybe that was the goal for my sympathy, to get my sympathy. But it immediately set me off. It immediately made me go, yeah, I'm really not liking this character as much as I thought I did. So yeah, also there was a ton of people missing, like a ton of characters missing. And so yeah, not to sound too negative, but again, most of the stuff was positive. Most of the stuff I can get on board with. But and I especially liked who would they have? Scorpion. Scorpion I thought he was a pretty good villain. They could have explored that more. I think Punisher was a good character, for sure. Punisher, he was probably my favorite character in the movie, to be honest. There's definitely more story to explore there. There was a lot of good world building that happened here, a lot of good foundational settings for the first movie of a new trilogy, which I actually appreciate, because so many movies will start off as, we're going in as a one-off, even if we're planned for a trilogy, in case people hop off. They didn't do that. They held firm, And because they didn't already give it away that Peter and MJ are back together, it continues a plot point into the next movie. They let Jean go away on a bus. That could continue a plot point to another movie. And so I really appreciate setting up foundational bones here. You know, like even Star Wars with its great trilogy didn't really set up foundational bones. It really acted like it could have just been a solo movie and dipped, right? Obsession, obviously my favorite movie this year, didn't set up foundational bones. It ended, where now a sequel with the same girl would seem a little odd, right? No, this movie knew what it was doing. It had an intention and a plan that it carried out, and it sure as hell did. And I also have to say, this is worth noting, because even movies I like, I tend to nod off and fall asleep because, let's face it, I have borderline epilepsy. I didn't. I was up. It kept me entertained. Not edge of my seat entertained, but it kept me, like, watching, you know, in a way that, like, not everything does. So, yeah, but, however, the thing that I really found annoying was this post-credit scene. People were telling me about this post-credit scene, and I was like, okay, let me wait. Let me see what this is about. And I had to sit through the whole freaking credits. And then after the credits, it was just basically telling you Spider-Man's going to be in space for the next movie. I literally am going to tell you guys, I will never, ever watch another post-credit scene for a movie ever again after that. That was a waste of my time. But anyway, aside from that, good movie, 8 out of 10. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. But for now, this is RJ signing out. Have a good one.